Everybody, hi. My name is Brad Case, and welcome to the very first episode of Life Worth Living, where I interview people who have lived a life worth living. And I am absolutely, if there's goosebumps, I got them right now. I have somebody who has become really special to me, and you will see why very soon. When I was 10 years old, I watched a movie called Rocky Five, and it left an impression on me because I found out that the bad guy, Tommy the Machine Gun, was actually a professional boxer. And not only that, he was awesome. He had the meanest left hook you've ever seen in your life, and he was a two-time heavyweight champion. And since then, my entire life, I've been a Tommy Morrison fan. I saw an interview one time with, it was recently, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, with his wife, Trisha Morrison. And it changed my life. I immediately reached out to her, and we have built a friendship. We built a partnership, and she's my darn partner in crime now, I am proud to say. So without any further ado, joining me today for my very first episode on this new series, Trisha Morrison. Trisha, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to meet you again.
Yes, ma'am. So we have talked ad nauseum. We have a lot of plans that we talked about. We'll get into that later. But I would just first of all like to say that I applaud your efforts. You've been doing this for a solid 9 years, 10 years now, and you have made so much headway when everybody was trying to shut the door in your face. So let's kick it off there. What's life been like for you the last 9 years?
Well, it's actually been very busy. Trying to get the truth out to all Tommy's fans has not been easy for some reason. You would think that people would love to hear the real story. But it's through people like you, through people that are dedicated fans of Tommy, the word is getting out now. So it's exciting now. I just have to say I'm just really excited about everything that's going to start happening for Tommy.
That's amazing. So if we can we'll give people a backstory. And Tommy, by the way, one of the all-time greats, underrated boxer. And for any of you who are watching this who don't really know who he is, you can YouTube it, or if you can find it. The man is a legend. 51 3-1, 44 knockouts, 87.5% knockout percentage. Two-time he's one-time WBO champion, and was it the IBF heavyweight champion?
Yeah.
And he is legendary. 1996, he was getting ready for a fight with what was it? Arthur Weathers. Arthur
Stormy Weathers. Yeah.
And he was informed the day before that he had tested positive for HIV. And this is where we're going to kick off our journey today. So Trisha, 1996, the day before he's getting ready to start or to kick off that fight with Arthur Weathers, which was supposed to end in a 3-fight deal against Mike Tyson, and I believe it was it $8 million?
It was more than that. It was a multi-million-dollar contract. Yes.
And so the day before, Tommy. So let's kick it off there. So how does Tommy find out?
How does he find out? Well, first of all, he doesn't find out until the actual day of the fight, which is February 10th, 1996 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And how he finds out is he goes to his, really, I want to call him a promoter, but he wasn't really Tommy's licensed promoter. His name is Tony Holden. And Tony Holden calls him into his suite at the MGM Hotel, which, as you know, was one of the largest hotels in the world at that time in 96. And it's Tony Holden that tells Tommy that he has tested positive for HIV.
Now, there's a famous, and we're not going to give them that much airtime because I believe it was not the best portrayal of Tommy's life, career, and everything with the people that were in it. But he famously had a soliloquy in the ESPN 30 for 30 called Tommy. And we're going to get into that too, by the way.
Right.
But I actually have a clip, and I'm gonna see if I can pull it up real quick. Where he, I have it right here, and I'm going to add add it to our show here, and let's take a quick look at it. And
I didn't sugarcoat it. I said, Tommy, there's no other way I can tell you. Tested positive for HIV.
Let's try that.
Man, I didn't sugarcoat it. I said, Tommy, there's no other way I can tell you, but you tested positive for HIV.
The volume was really low on that, but basically what Tony is saying is that he had no other way to tell Tommy, you told Tommy he had HIV. And if you going on to his story, he said, Tommy said, we'll just worry about it after the fight. And he said, Tommy, there's not going to be a fight. You're done. But there is, where did Tony get that information from?
Well, if you watch ESPN, you'll see that Tony publicly says to the world, because the world has watched this, is that Mark Ratner, who was the executive commissioner for the Nevada Commission, calls him on his phone and says, I need to meet you at the ring and don't bring anyone, right? And that was the day of the fight.
We have a clip of that too. Let's take a look at that, because I believe Tony's story isn't really holding up as well as he portrayed in that documentary, which, by the way, got way
Nevada Athletic Commissioner. He goes, listen, I want you at the ring right now, and don't bring anybody. I just need to talk to you. And I went up and sat down next to him, and he had tears in his eyes. And he goes, Tommy failed his test. And I said, what test? He goes, he tested positive for HIV.
Yeah.
He tells quite the dramatic tale of it, doesn't he? So before we move on. So then Tommy is told this news, and he's shut down before the 3-fight deal even started. Now, the way that documentary portrayed it was that he had lost to Lennox Lewis. They were going to give him one little swan song right off into the sunset, a 3-fight deal that was going to culminate in a 3-fight deal with Don King. It was going to culminate in a fight with Mike Tyson.
Right.
But you and I talked before, and that portrayal, it wasn't this last-ditch effort. The contract had been signed before the Lennox Lewis fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's not forget that, back in 1996, when somebody tells you you've got HIV, that was like a death sentence, right? And here we are. It's very frustrating, Brad, because here we are, Tommy's sitting there listening to somebody who's not a physician and being told basically he's going to die by the time he gets to his car. And remember, Tommy was he just turned 27 years old, right, in January, a few weeks before. So can you imagine how he felt? I mean, the way you're starting your program, A Life Worth Living, let's not forget he had a life. He was a human being. And then to be told that he's got HIV while he's sitting on the sofa or the end of the bed in a hotel room by somebody that's not a physician, I cannot imagine how he felt, right? I've only seen how he felt from the time I met him. I never forgot that day. So the story that's being portrayed out there in the media by ESPN is being spun by all kinds of YouTubers, and nobody has taken the time to listen to exactly what's happened since then, the true story. So there's a lot of things that are incorrect in ESPN 30 for 30. There was a multi-million-dollar contract signed with Don King, and I have all the documents here in front of me, which I want to go through with you on that, because everything I'm saying is supported, is backed up in the court of law. So, I've pieced everything together, and what's out there still with ESPN 30 for 30 is not correct. And I really don't know how Tony Holden can just sit and watch that be shown every day in the world to people that are just believing somebody that was not a physician, right?
Right.
So carry on.
Well, actually, let's give a quick. I've always been curious of this, and all the times we've talked, I haven't asked. So, how did Tommy meet Tony, and how did Tony become Tommy's manager?
Okay, so Tony Holden became friends with Tommy. And, let's remember that, Tommy already had 290 amateur fights, right? And 21 he lost. He had 50 tough men fights, one he lost before he even met Tony Holden. And so Tony Holden actually was never his manager at any time, and that's in court records. He was never his licensed promoter either, and that's in court records. So basically, he's labeled himself, and that's in court records as well, as Tommy's advisor. And in the boxing world, to be an advisor, you don't need to get licensed by any commission, but it's a big title for some. So Tony Holden became friends with Tommy, but never he was his manager or his promoter legally on paper.
You made a statement just a second, and we were talking about life worth living, and Tommy was a man. He was somebody. He was a boy who became a teenager, who became a man, who, in my personal opinion, was done the worst deal ever. And that's why I'm right next to you in every step of the way of this, to almost to fix his tarnished legacy, which was no fault of his own. But what breaks my heart, going back to him, just he was a man with feelings. He was a big brawny, it was 6'2", 230. But when this happened, his hometown, they used to have a sign up, hometown of Tommy Morrison. Everybody just kind of shunned him like he was a leper, and he was left with nobody when he gave so much to every single person that he came in contact with. There are so many stories, and we put it in some of our little vignettes and our promos. Nice to meet you. Tommy never had a bad interaction with his fans or with anybody he came in contact with, and that breaks my heart that people just took this hook, line, and sinker, threw him out to the curb, and said, "Well, you're dead. Bye. Don't touch me."
Yeah, he even had this saying that he would tell me, Trisha, when the money's gone, so are your fake friends. So, he knew really by the end of his life, his true friends and who were actually there just to make money off him.
Well, let me ask you a question. And the final, and I know we got to move on. Who were his real friends, in your opinion?
He had probably 5 good friends, and remember, in those days, in those days, only like 10 years ago, your phones actually had would sync with each other, right? So he would have all my phone numbers in his cell phone. I would have all his contacts in my cell phone. For some odd reason, that's how they. I think it was Verizon did it, right? So I knew who his friends were. And I can name them, but I don't think I will today. But they will come up later on. But I can, on one hand, I can count his true friends that did not dump him when the times were hard.
Yes, and that breaks my heart, because the man entertained millions of people, and since we've started discussing, and since I've started talking about Tommy more openly, there have been so many people that have come out, and we're in West Tennessee, right outside of Memphis, and Tommy Morrison is seeing a resurrection in this part of the state, and actually online. He's almost like he's trending with the work that you've been doing, the exposure you've been giving it. But we're going to move on. So after the positive test, and so what's the next part of his story as it moves along?
Well, the so-called positive test led to him being rushed out of Las Vegas, right, back to Tulsa, supposedly for some more testing. And again, when I go through the documents I've got here, you'll find that actually there was no testing, because there's no test results in court records to prove that there was any further testing. So he goes through a period of time where very, very dark years, turns to drugs, and his whole life is completely ruined by that one diagnosis, which is now no longer a diagnosis.
Yeah. You become the most loved person in the room to the most shunned. And I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people that can blame going down certain paths and doing certain things until you've been put in that position, So when you said you had the documents in front of you, let's go through some of them, what you have today to share with us.
Okay. So I can actually sum it up. There is a fan out there. His name is Bill Mullins, and I'm going to sum it up the way he wrote it on a post, because I'm just blown away by Tommy's fans that really have stuck together with me on this. Mm-hmm. There was something that Tommy said, I fought for my fans. Would they fight for me? He said that one time back in 2011, sitting on the porch, and I'm thinking, just out of the blue, he says that. And I'm thinking, well, why are you saying that? And he said, because I fought for them. Would they fight for me? And at that time, there was nothing for them to fight for. Mm-hmm. But this one particular fan, Bill Mullins, he says, everyone involved in the HIV diagnosis now denies ever giving the diagnosis and denies that they suspended him from boxing. His widow at the time of his death, which is me, has fought tirelessly for a decade to prove he never had HIV, and backs it up with a mountain of evidence, including postmortem tissue samples that show no trace of HIV/AIDS. And he goes on to say, please check out the facts for yourself and don't just believe the false narrative that has been circulating as truth for decades. Rest in peace. And he's just one now of thousands of fans out there that are getting wind of exactly what happened and is fighting for Tommy, which I think is really neat. So let me get into some of the documents. Are you ready for it?
Let me buckle up. All right, let's do it.
Right. All right. So everything that I'm mentioning to you is backed up by court records. So I just want to let you know that here's a picture. Can you see it? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. That's Dr. Robert Voy. Mm-hmm. And he actually writes and says, I did not diagnose you as having AIDS. I did your required licensing exam and found you physically qualified and fit to box at the time. And that is the physician that works for the Nevada Commission in Nevada in 1996. And you can look it up, docket 185, page 14, lines 1 to 4. So that's one bit of proof there. Then let's go on to this gentleman here. Mm-hmm. And can you see it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And he is the counsel for this physician, Robert Voy. And in court documents, he writes, it is important for you to understand that Dr. Voy did not diagnose and never has diagnosed Mr. Morrison as HIV positive. And his name is Counsel Mortensen, and he's the legal counsel for Dr. Robert Voy. And you can find that docket 283, page 28, lines 14 to 15. Then you have the Nevada Commission itself. And they are called the state defendants, because I did take them to court on this. And this is why I've got all these legal documents, is I got exactly what I wanted. And the state defendants say, neither the state defendants nor the lab, Quest Diagnostics, ever diagnosed Mr. Morrison as carrying the HIV virus. And that's in docket 174, page 7, lines 2 to 4. And I can go on.
I've spent the last 3 weeks going through everything you've sent me, and it is, I mean, if you were to print it off, that's just what I have. You have 100 times more. It's about that. It's that thick. So now I know that at the time of his passing, there was also before or after the autopsy, they had also done blood work on him then, and at the time of his passing, no HIV, no AIDS.
That's correct. No HIV, no AIDS. There's more documentation here. Even the physician that did the weigh-in, Dr. Berliner, can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Yeah. Even he said, that he was fit to fight. So going down to even the lab CEO, Dr. Henry Soloway, I conclude Mr. Morrison was never infected with the HIV virus. Now, this is the CEO of the lab in Las Vegas, and that's docket 136, page 9, 27 to 28. And he even puts it in an affidavit. You can't lie in affidavits. So that is in there. And then, of course, if you're in the boxing world, Dr. Margaret Goodman, and of course, this is all coming out after Tommy has passed away, okay, after that post-mortem report. So you've got Dr. Margaret Goodman, and there she is, well known in the boxing community. She runs the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association in Vegas. She is a Hall of Famer, right? She's got brilliant qualifications. And she says, it's a question she answers. I ask her, admit you can provide a document that confirms the diagnosis of the virus HIV in Tommy's blood on February 10th, 1996. Simple question. And she says, deny. She can't provide it. And she puts it on an affidavit as well. So again, you cannot lie on these affidavits. And Dr. Margaret Goodman has been with them, or had been with them, for years. So what happened was, you've got this great famous picture. Right? I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, ma'am. I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, at the top you've got Magic Johnson, and also you've got his physician, Dr. David Ho, all right, who was on the front of the Time magazine, right, one year. And at the bottom, you've got a picture of Tommy and Tony Holden, right, who's not a physician, right, who's the one that broke the news to Tommy and stood by him at a conference. Right. Well, where is Tommy's physician? Why hasn't anybody else picked up on this? It's so blatantly obvious. And then, as you mentioned, we did have lots of testing done. And of course, a lot of this information I didn't know about, Tommy didn't know about, but they've got this one physician in Tulsa, right? And he notes that, and actually writes from James Hutton, an infectious disease specialist with Tulsa Infectious Disease Clinic in Tulsa, Oklahoma, shows that he initially examined the claimant, which is Tommy, in March 5, 1996. Now, get the timeline. The timeline is very important in this whole thing, right? February 10th is when Tony Holden diagnosed Tommy with HIV in Las Vegas, right? Yeah, and told Tommy he was going to, die. It was a death sentence. And then you take him to Tulsa, and then I can't even provide you with any physician's affidavit or any test results from Tulsa, right, that would support a diagnosis from Vegas. I can't provide it. The only thing I can provide to you is this Dr. James Hutton, right? And this piece that I'm reading to you is from an attorney. And he is stating that Dr. James Hutton noted that the claimant, Tommy, had been found to be HIV positive during testing that was performed in Nevada prior to a heavyweight boxing match that the claimant was scheduled to participate in. All right, so this is real important. So everybody now is referring back to February 10th, 1996. Okay, So nobody is taking the responsibility anymore of diagnosing Tommy because it was already done in Vegas. That's it, right? And that's docket 175, and it was filed on the 8th of June. So when I started to look and find all these things, I then turned to the FDA, the CDC, and all those organized government organizations. I did not want to be seen as a denialist, like Tommy was labeled, right? A conspiracy theorist. I wanted to do things properly. I wanted to provide in court everything that was necessary. And as it happens, the testing that Tommy underwent in during my time, and near the end of his life had never been done before on Tommy. None of the physicians from 1996 through to 2011 had ever done any of the testing that this gentleman here says you need. And that is Dr. Anthony Fauci, right? And let's be honest, this is Dr. Anthony Fauci's virus, HIV. And Dr. Anthony Fauci, if you go back on some media, you'll see that he says that you have to have certain other diseases to be classified as having AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, ma'am. I was waiting for us to get to our guest of honor.
Right.
So actually, that's really so. I'm going to play a clip, and I want to say one of the first conversations that Trisha and I had was we talked about Fauci, and we talked and honestly, I have not really always had him in the best of esteem, and duly so. In the 80s when he was testing vaccinations for HIV or was doing HIV testing, when he first came on my radar, 05-ish, when the New York Times posted an article about him almost exclusively doing his testing on African-American orphaned children in New York City. And that's when he was already on my bad list there because, it's anyway, that's just, it's horrible. It's almost like eugenics or something. But we have a clip of Fauci. And I don't make it a practice to have too many clips of him because I don't want to give him too much airtime, but in context of what we are talking about, let me pull it up real quick. And let's see, here he is. I mean, he is looking 80s. This is an 80s look right here.
The secondary complications that someone will get who has AIDS, and let me explain what I mean. First, we'll go through the definition. It's the presence of pneumocystis carinii pneumonia or other opportunistic infections or Kaposi sarcoma. Now,
so, as it pause there, I'll finish the presence. So, what is he saying? There has to be other factors. Is that what he's saying, Trisha?
Correct. Yeah. So, HIV. When anybody ever spoke about HIV, they would always speak about Dr. Anthony Fauci. And Dr. Anthony Fauci's name, along with HIV, was kind of like a household conversation between Tommy and I. And so I'm thinking, when Tommy died, I'm thinking, okay, so I need to turn to Dr. Anthony Fauci and what he believed in and get the scientific evidence of somebody who had AIDS, right? So Dr. Anthony Fauci says in that clip that to have AIDS, you have to have a secondary disease. And that has to be pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, Kaposi sarcoma. So for short, it's PCP or KS, Kaposi sarcoma, right? And any other kind of opportunistic disease, right? So I'm thinking, wow, and I found that clip randomly, and what I didn't know is that between 2012 and 2013, Tommy had actually landed at one of the best facilities in the nation, University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha, Nebraska, and had no idea, but all the physicians there were actually testing him and abiding by Fauci's algorithm and testing him for all these diseases that I didn't even know about at the time. And so now I'm piecing together why they were testing, right? Because remember, Tommy is worldwide known. You've got Magic Johnson, and then you've got Tommy Morrison. Magic Johnson went for all the medications and stuff like that. And Tommy Morrison was always the conspiracy theorist in denial. And so you've got the two, right? So just to show you that the physicians that we encountered, and some people have even said on YouTube that they are conspiracy theorists. And I'm thinking, how could you say all these physicians that are highly educated in science and are specific in the infectious disease area and follow the science as we know it now from Fauci, how can you call them conspiracy theorists? You're all wanting Tommy to have HIV/AIDS, fine, but let's get the proof of it, right? Well, right now we actually have the proof that he never had HIV/AIDS. So between November, October of 2012 through to when Tommy died, he was tested for PCP, Kaposi CMV, Cryptococcus, histoplasmosis, and a whole bunch of other diseases that Fauci classifies that if you have that disease, you have AIDS, right? So Tommy had no HTLV1 or HTLV2. He had no JVC. He had no Legionella. He had no pneumococcus, right? And then when people started to doubt what I was saying, I thought, well, wait a minute, let me have a look at the test results from University of Nebraska Medical Center and other areas, and let me find out if these physicians are real, right? I mean, maybe they are conspiracy theorists. If that's the case, then, Dr. Riley, who did a biopsy, found no Kaposi sarcoma. She can't be a conspiracy theorist, right? What about Dr. Bongo? He found no JCP virus, right? How about this guy, Dr. Bauman? He found no PCP. These are all the diseases. How about Dr. Hasty? He found no CMV, right? These are real people. And how about Dr. Pisano? Found no JCP virus. I'm going to go on, okay? How about Dr. Steckelberg? She found no histoplasmosis. This beautiful lady, and all these people I've never met, Tommy never met, and this is Dr. Kozel. She also found no Kaposi sarcoma. And then you've got these guys also. These are all physicians, right? And they also found no PCP, no CMV, no opportunistic pneumonia, no JCP virus, right? These are people that have gone to college, university, and they all stand by Fauci, right? And his algorithm. So I'm comparing what people are saying on the mainstream media, where, well, his mother said he had HIV/AIDS. And I'm going, I'm sorry, she's a real sweet lady, 80 years old. She's not even a physician. So I'm comparing her to all these guys. Even Dr. Antonio Osio, in his affidavit, he says Tommy never had HIV/AIDS. Here we have Dr. Nielsen, and he's the one that did the antemortem before Tommy died. And he is at Massachusetts General Hospital. He even photo imaged Tommy's blood, right? And found no virus in him. So, then when Tommy did die, and he died of cardiac arrest, multi-organ failure, and septic shock and septicemia. He was actually put in a induced coma, and within 24 hours, he did not get out of it. They did a postmortem for me, and Tommy died September 1, 2013, and September 2nd, the media went crazy. ESPN went crazy. Everybody's going, well, he was diagnosed with HIV in February 1996 in Las Vegas. All right, let's think back timeline. February 1996, Vegas. Well, who diagnosed him? There's only one person, Holden, right? Everybody else has not diagnosed him. Well, because he was diagnosed with HIV in 1996, that means that he died of AIDS in 2013. That would be the normal thinking, right? Except that none of this actually adds up anymore, because there was no diagnosis in 1996. You've got all these physicians and experts saying that he never had an AIDS-defining disease. And then you've got Dr. Phil Smith, okay, and he's at University of Nebraska Center. He's a distinguished scientist. He found Tommy was negative for HIV/AIDS. See that we've got Stephen Hendricks, who did the very first electron microscopes with the Fauci era on HIV, and he found no retroviruses in Tommy, which is the scientific word for HIV. Remember that, retroviruses. Okay, and a pathology report was sent to me, and it was signed, dated, with a full methodology, which was used by Fauci et al. When they discovered HIV. So these are all the supporting documents that I've got, which came from a lawsuit, right? But just to finish it a little bit more, I went to the CDC, because everybody's going, oh, okay, well, he didn't have HIV/AIDS, but he had a low T cell count. Well, this is another thing that Fauci brought out again, is, if you have a low T cell count, a low CD4 count, then, you also qualify for having HIV/AIDS, right? Well, I went directly to the CDC, to their doctor there, and Dr. Owen, and she emailed me back, and it's in court records as well. So I'm asking Dr. Michelle Owen, about a CD4 test kit. And she said, well, at this time, and that means 1996, there was not a CD4 test kit. Okay, so in some of the deposition testimony, I'm being told in 1996 that Tommy's T cell counts, CD4, were really, really low, right? Well, at that time, there was no CD4 test kit, okay? Again, the timeline is very, very important. And then Dr. Michelle Owen goes on to say, it is possible to have a very low CD4 count caused by other diseases, such as cancer, other infectious diseases, genetic disorders, autoimmune disorders. So can't rely on a CD4 count in Tommy's situation as being, well, he had a low CD4 count. That means he had HIV/AIDS. No, it doesn't mean that. And that comes directly from the CDC, Dr. Michelle Owens, right? And then another one test that everybody says that proved that Tommy had HIV was the viral load, the PCR test, right? And again, from Dr. Michelle Owen, when you see Tommy standing up, and I think you of this, or everybody's seen it at a press conference in Tulsa. You know, I have definitely tested positive for HIV. You know, they did all these tests and everything. Well, that was February 1996 again in Tulsa, right? Where Tony Holden stands up and he does another press conference for Tommy on a Monday. And remember, Tommy was told that he had HIV on Saturday by Tony Holden. Well, it doesn't take a day to get results. Normally it took a little bit longer than that, right? Especially over a weekend, okay? And then he says he had, you know, more extensive testing and everything. And that was February of 1996. Well, this comes directly from the CDC. The first HIV viral load test to be FDA approved was Roche Diagnostics. It came on the market June, July of 1996. Okay, not February of 96, June, July of 1996. Okay, then she goes on to say, if the testing was done prior to this time in 1996, it would have been a non-FDA approved research use test. Okay, non-FDA approved research use test. In any situation, this is from her, okay, her meaning her, right, from the CDC, Dr. Michelle Owen. She goes, in any situation, viral load tests are not actually approved for screening and making a diagnosis. Okay. So for 30, 40 years, doctors have been making diagnosis using the PCR test for HIV when they were never approved by the FDA. If you go to the FDA today and ask them, was there an emergency authorization to use a PCR test? They would say no, there wasn't. It's all the same testing. You know, I was thinking today, you know, the testing for HIV is a blood test, right? Although with Tommy, we did blood, sputum, sperm, cerebral spine fluid, right? And tissue. We did all those testings on different parts of his body for HIV, found nothing, right? We even photo imaged and everything to find the virus, found nothing. In fact, I have a photo here that Tommy absolutely loved, right? And it was false positives. You've got Dr. Fauci there and Tommy just, you know, having a look at our dog. And there's a test that was done on dogs, and the dogs tested positive on HIV tests. So it's just very, very strange.
There is so much out there, and that's another blessing that I have found in meeting you and talking to you, is that it's some of the avenues you've gotten me down in my research that have really made me think, and it really started to piece the Fauci puzzle together, we'll call it. But I do have a question, and this was something that I thought was rather interesting, rather confusing, and maybe you could clear it up for me. Magic Johnson was diagnosed with AIDS, HIV, was it 91, 92-ish? And, and he was sent on the tour, and he was, you know, they sent him everywhere. And I believe the following year, in 91, he was diagnosed. And then that same year, I believe that, or early the next year, he was in the NBA All-Star game, blood, sweat. And then he represented the United States on the Dream Team in the Olympics in 92. Tommy gets diagnosed in 96 and is banished from everything. I just found that quite odd that Magic was given a hall pass basically, and Tommy was kicked to the curb.
Yeah. You know, something that I haven't really shared with anybody, but at one of the hospitals that we were at, there was a nurse there, and she flat out came to me and she said, if I have to resuscitate anybody, it would be Magic Johnson and not Tommy Morrison. And I could not believe that she came out with that. And I think mainly because Tommy, he started to do his own research, right? And Magic Johnson was very much promoting, all the medications and everything. So maybe he was. I mean, I don't know Magic Johnson's medical information, but I know my husband's medical information. And because my husband did not have HIV/AIDS and believed it right from the very beginning, really, because he would wake up and say, why do I feel so good if I'm supposed to be so sick? He refused that medication, right? And that medication that they give you, he would say, the side effects of the medication are the symptoms of HIV/AIDS, is what he would say. So yeah, he did do his research.
So I actually wanted to share a clip with everybody real quick, and this is from 2010, and I have quite a few. I probably have more than pictures of Tommy Morrison on my computer than a heterosexual male should, but I just want to share with everyone real quick. This is Tommy doing it was a little like a mini vignette on his comeback and when he was attempting to come back to boxing. And by the way, Trisha, will you share with everybody, was it Tommy reinstated out of the blue in, what was it, 2010?
06.
06.
Yeah. July 11, 2006, in the court records, it shows that they secretly lifted his suspension, and that's 10 years. So his prime obviously would have been between 26 and 27 for the next 10 years to fight Mike Tyson and everything and really, do well in boxing. And that was the time when he was kicked out. And then they secretly lifted his suspension on July 11th, 2006. And they provided proof of that in the documents.
Well, in Tommy's own words, let's see how he was feeling. Let's see how he was feeling in 2010, because unless he's a zombie, this is the healthiest zombie I've ever seen in my life. So let's share this a little bit.
The more I found out that what I was being told was a bunch of bull. What I do know is, all the things that they told me was going to happen to me never happened. Am I Superman? No, I don't think so. I used to think I was Superman back when I was 21, but, I just think that there was a misdiagnosis.
Yeah. So, and that was from a little clip that we were doing from one of our I Am Tommy Morrison campaign, which we will get to shortly. And there's one more thing. You brought up the press conference, and I want to share that with everybody real quick, just to kind of reorientate everybody into what we're talking about now. What always got me about this press conference is that he took people's word for it, and he trusted.
See me as a role model, but see me as an individual that had the opportunity to be a role model and blew it.
No, he didn't blow anything. And one of the reasons why Trish and I we brought up, that she has been the conspiracy theorist, right? The deniers. Tommy was a denier. Trisha's a denier. People on YouTube, and I guess the doctors are deniers, because the documentary that was done on the worldwide leader in sports did not paint Trisha in the best light. And that's actually was my first exposure to her, was watching that documentary, and they had framed it to where she looked, they made you look nuts, Trisha. You and I talked about it. They did not, they yellow washed you. First of all, the story around you, and then they inserted you for about 2 minutes. And I think I have the picture here, but they basically had everybody saying Trisha was bouncing him around from state to state, hospital to hospital when the Medicare ran out, and she was killing him. And he was ready to die for 2 years, and she just kept pushing him. And that right there was my first exposure. And then I saw that first interview you did when you had all this laid out, and I went, "Oh my goodness!" That opened my eyes to you. And listen, my life's been blessed ever since meeting you. So I want to kind of show the picture that I have of kind of what. Let's see. They did what was called yellow washing, and I'll have to pull up your picture. But here's what, when we say that, this is kind of what they did.
It turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything.
Good Lord. You would think that man was literally, as soon as that clip ended, he died. And they distorted, like, so I remember you telling me the story, and if you'll share it with everybody, the day of that interview, it was going to be a 3-hour interview. You got 2 minutes. Yeah. That's all I gave you. How did that go, by the way?
Yeah. It was, I was so excited to think that ESPN were bringing out a movie on my husband, right? Remember, he's my husband. He died in 2013, and this is now 2017. And I'm thinking, great, this is going to be a really good way of getting it out to everybody in the world that Tommy did not have HIV/AIDS. Everything that I've shown you, right, I showed ESPN. So they flew down, and I mean, I was just so naive, Brad. My first ever interview. So having worked in the airline business, I often would wear my hair up, right? And had my hair up with a scarf, like I still do, have a scarf, right? So they come in and they completely change my whole living room. They take down all the photographs, all the Elvis picture that Tommy had, completely rearranged all the furniture. And I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be really, really good. And, and they're taking everything down. They're putting it, and they said, oh, you need to take your hair down. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I have first of all not slept all night because I'm so nervous about this. And then I put my hair up, it took me about half an hour to do it, and they're telling me to take it down. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe that's how you do stuff, right? And so I took it down, and then I heard in the background them saying, well, she's starting to look like the others now. And I'm thinking, the others, what others? I had no idea that they were trying to make me look like the other wives of Tommy Morrison, right? Because I didn't know who was going to be in this movie, right? Or documentary. All I was thinking was, it's going to be a great documentary. It's going to show the best of Tommy, and it's going to show the truth at the end. And I'm going to sit down, go through all the documents, and they were agreeing, yeah, great, And so it was 3 hours, right? And then I wasn't invited to the premiere. Okay, so I should have thought right there and then, right, there's something wrong here. So I emailed, I said, how come I haven't been invited to the premiere? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, that's pretty rude, but also I'm working. I haven't had time to take the time off to go to the premiere. So I got a last minute invite. Oh yeah, you can come if you want to, if I want to, right? This is about my husband. So anyway, I don't go because I can't take time off work. I work. And then apparently I think everybody got their own copy of the Tommy ESPN 30 for 30 video. I never got anything, right? And I'm thinking, well, this is very strange. And then I started to get slammed on social media, and my let's just say they did an awesome character assassination job of me, right? They did. And that's what I heard from everybody. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, at least thank goodness I didn't go to that premiere, because it looks as though the whole family want to lynch me for finding out that their son, their brother, their ex never had HIV/AIDS. There's a problem here.
You were not toting the narrative.
No. Yeah, all I was doing was showing what the experts in the field of microbiology, virology, Fauci et al., the people who the virus belongs to, I was showing proof that Tommy never had it, and everybody should be really excited, right? But you know the rest of the story, right?
Sorry if I look distracted. I was trying to find the picture, and you had sent it to me. And by the way, follow Trisha on all. She's on all the social media platforms. And she shares a lot of this stuff, a lot of this truth you can find on her Facebook page, Trisha or Tommy.
You
Trisha
don't
Morrison.
have to show. You don't have to show that photo if you don't want to.
I was one of the first nights we talked, and we looked at the picture, and I looked at like you right before the interview, and then what they posed, and I meant it with all like due respect. It was like they aged you like 20 years and had you looking.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was, but that really does happen, folks.
Well, just like it happened to Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
So from what I've seen is they completely yellowed me.
Mm-hmm.
They made my mouth squishy like this, right? And they made me look as though I didn't have one eyebrow. And then after rearranging my complete furniture in the back, there's nothing. I'm on there for like 2 seconds. There's no mention of a post-mortem report showing no HIV/AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that I was the wicked widow, right? And even today, Brad, on Facebook, a memory popped up, and it was a memory from one of Tommy's family members accusing me of having sold Tommy's ashes on eBay, right? Which led to another story where I went to the legal department at eBay, and I asked them to check all my accounts. First of all, I've never sold anything of Tommy's on eBay, let alone ashes, right? And this was just horrific. I could not believe it. Why are they doing this? I just couldn't get over it.
And for context, at the end of that documentary, they kind of discussed that Trisha was kind of hoarding the ashes, and Tommy had a specific list of who were to get portions of him. I hate to say it, and that seems like crude to say it like that, and you followed his wishes to a T. And so, so segueing from that, and if we bounce around, I don't mean to, but you did something that was so impactful that I saw, and it was a visual you've done. So if Tommy didn't die, if he never had it and he never died of it, and I'm looking at this man in 2010 training, and I have he is jacked, he's ripped, he's healthier than I am, and I'm quote unquote healthy. What was in 2010 and beyond? Where did it all start to go down health-wise for him?
Yeah. There was one particular incident which was the downfall of my husband, and I do reenact it because I think it's very important that people know exactly what he went through. Right? He was thrown into jail over what to be a bogus felony warrant of arrest. And this was in Tennessee, in Sevierville, in the jail there. And he was thrown in there, and he was there 3 weeks, and then he was extradited to Wichita, Kansas. And I was finally able to bail him out with the help of one of the 5 friends that he had. And he came out of jail with a tick bite to the side of his chest. And the tick bite, remember, I took lots of photographs because this was very, very important, because this was the downfall. The tick bite was like that. And it had been drained by a physician in Wichita, Kansas. And I actually have the statement with the dollar amount, the draining and everything there, and a letter from a physician. And I'm going to read that, right, because I've been accused that this never happened. And it says, please be advised that Tommy Morrison was seen in my office on September 29th, 2011. He had a large abscess to his right axilla, which was a result of an bite that had occurred a few days prior to his visit on the 29th. It was necessary to drain the abscess at that time. If you require any additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me. And that is a letter that's signed by a doctor, Dr. Antonio Ossio. So that so that was the beginning of that after he came out of jail. Then he went for surgery, and that was in Fort Sanders Hospital in Knoxville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And actually the surgeon, as soon as Tommy and I walked in the door before surgery, he looked at Tommy, he said, "You're in denial." Those were his first words. "You're in denial. You tested positive for HIV in Vegas in 1996, and you've been in denial ever since." Those were his exact words. And his name is Dr. George Kirkman II. All right. And so I was kind of quite concerned about that. But, you know, we thought, well, you know, he needs surgery. So on December 1, we went for surgery, and it was supposed to be a 1-hour surgery. And we didn't come out until December 8. For some reason, it was just complications for the surgeon. I don't know whether they were on purpose or not, but we came out, and Tommy was a completely different man, completely different. On the way to the hospital, he had driven. I had sat next to him in the car. On the way back, I had to drive. He could not drive. He could barely do anything. So we get home on December 8th. One of the first things that happens when we're sitting on the porch is he gets served with a restraining order from his second ex-wife, right? To never see his kids again, which is a real shame because that's the reason why we moved to Tennessee, right? And he wanted to see that child grow up and never got the chance to. So the next day, the home health lady came to change the wound on his chest. And I'm reenacting this, but I was there, and these photographs are actually real, and the gauze is real. Not from the date, because it was completely covered in blood. But this is a 4x4 piece of gauze. So the home health lady took the gauze off and was just about to put another piece of gauze back on it again, just like that, nice clean piece, when I, the wicked widow, spotted something in his chest like that, sticking out, right? Mm. And I said, "There's something in his chest." And she said, "No, that's all I've got to do." And I said, "No, there's something in his chest." So I'm reenacting for you, if you're watching this, 12 foot of surgical gauze left in Tommy's chest was pulled out. I'm reenacting and putting it into like a Kleenex box here, tightly packed. And what the nurse did, the home health nurse, she pulled on the strand, right? And this is for real. This is exactly what happened. And this is his chest. And out comes all this gauze. And Tommy is sitting on a stool in the kitchen, right? No pain meds, no anesthetic, no nothing. And this gauze is covered in blood clots, and it stinks, and it had been left in there for 8 days, packed, tightly packed. And for a documentary not to give any second to this event is just shameful, right? And out comes 12 foot of surgical gauze.
And now, by the way, this isn't just 2-ply toilet paper here. This is thick, 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 thick.
This is thick gauze, right? And then people tend to think it's some little strand like that. It's not. It's thick gauze, surgical gauze, 12 foot of it in his chest that gets pulled out by a poor home health lady who had no idea that it was in there. This is a photograph of me showing her, this is Tommy's chest, showing her where it is. And I take a couple of photographs because she didn't believe me that there was anything in there because there were no orders for her. So this is a flat tongue, right? And I'm showing her, wait, there's something in his chest. Can you imagine if we hadn't even have seen it, what would have happened? But still, pulling out something like that, something still did happen. So once it was pulled out, there it is. You could fit your whole hand inside Tommy's chest, right? Now, as I always say, you've never seen Tommy cry in the ring, and he served out of punches from Ray Mercer that night, and Michael Bent, and Lennox Lewis, but you've never seen him cry in the ring. He was crying. He was really crying.
As this is all going on, so Tommy's just chilling or not chilling, but he's in the kitchen, and y'all are just going to doctor this thing up. And he said, "Whoa, nay, what is that?" And does Tommy look down and go, "Trisha, what the hell are you talking about?" Or anything like that? And then you point to it. I mean, so as it's being pulled, is he crying the entire? I mean, I'm sure this is. I mean, this is an open wound. This has got to hurt like nothing.
Yeah, he is, but he's still tough, right? He's still a tough, and he's just used to pain. But he was crying, and the home health nurse was crying, and she actually had to sit on the sofa. I had to take care of her because she almost passed out. And then we did have a friend of Tommy's who was there at the time and witnessed it and took care of Tommy. And Tommy went into our bathroom there, and he said, "Just leave me alone." And he tried to resolve the situation, and he just was very tough. He walked out of there and walked down the road, and then came back again. He was that tough. But that night. And the nurse didn't suggest taking him to the hospital. We actually called the surgeon when this was happening and said, "What have you done? You left 12 foot of surgical gauze in his chest." "Oh, I'm sorry," he said. And so we carried on then looking after Tommy. And people say, "Well, why didn't you file a lawsuit against them for that?" Well, I actually have all the paperwork here that I sent, and I reported the surgeon to the Tennessee Medical Advisory Board while this was happening. They lost the paperwork, right? And then I had to refile it. And then in Tennessee, it's 12 months statute of limitations. And they said, "Sorry, you're too late."
Welcome to the South. We take our time.
So that's what happened. That was the beginning of his downfall. That night, he was walking back to the bedroom, and his leg gave way. Of all the things, his leg gave way on the side of the chest wound, and he fell directly through the wall, through the sheetrock, broke the sheetrock, and then he landed on his neck. And that was the start of his downfall. And we didn't know at the time, but landing on his neck actually caused him to paralyze half his voice box, which meant that it was very difficult for him to eat and drink without aspirating because the voice box wouldn't close properly. The surgeon said, because he said Tommy was diagnosed with HIV in 1996 in Vegas, right? By who? By Tony Holden. He's the only guy, that the wound would never heal. But actually, a year to the date of the surgery, the wound healed, And I don't have a color copy of this, but you can see where I've highlighted it's a nasty scar, but it actually healed. But what it did cause was septic shock and septicemia. And for 21 months, Tommy was in and out of septic shock and septicemia. And that's how he died on September 1, 2013, from cardiac arrest and septic shock, septicemia, and multi-organ failure. So that was the downfall, and nobody wants to talk about it. But I do, because that was the downfall.
I do too. And I have a question that I just trying to put this in my head. Were you there bedside when he took his last breath? That's the best way I could put it. Leading up to his last breath, I hate to say it like that, but did you say your goodbyes? And like, was he? I know he wasn't able to talk, but that happy and fresh. Was he able to communicate with you any way?
You know how he communicated over the 21 months was he would cough once for yes, cough twice for no, right? Because if it's your voice box, you can't verbally say a lot. Although if you're in a position where the voice box closes, he would actually be able to talk, right? It was just yeah.
Well, so there was a lot made, and that kind of fell into the narrative. That would plaster this picture of Tommy all over everywhere. You know, that he had looked like a 70-year-old man and all this and that.
Right.
And you know, you know, going back to the arrest, and he was in there 30 days. In there 30 days in solitary confinement. And this is a lot of things that a lot of people don't even know, with no blanket, no pillow, sleeping on a concrete floor. And I'm going to share, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I'm going to try and share what Tommy looked like the day of his arrest, and then what he looked like when he came out. And dadgummit, if I was in solitary confinement for 30 days, sleeping on a concrete floor and all this other stuff, I probably wouldn't be looking so fresh. But let's see here. Let me find it real quick. But while I pull that up, I mean, it's really, I'm not going to say amazing, but it's unbelievable how that they just wanted to run with Tommy's life was so, he just went so downhill, and he let himself go and this and that. And that here it is. Let me pull this up real quick. That he had, you know, after his AIDS diagnosis, just went downhill, and this is the stuff that needs to be told about him.
Yeah.
Let me get it up here real quick, and let's find it. Anyway, so Trisha, while I pull that up, after his passing, did his family? Were they involved in any? You know, did they come to say goodbye, or did anybody do anything?
Well, he was referred to as the body, right? Which is kind of sad, yeah. But I don't know if Tony Holden will remember this, but he wanted to subpoena Tommy's body, which is something pretty absurd. But no, nothing, no contact.
So and then going back to, you know, there's a clip in that documentary where he says that he came to visit you guys, and that he said, you know, Trisha, Tommy's got AIDS, let him pass, and all that other hoopla. You know, that's not. Did he come and did he disregard? Did he know about the spider bite? Did he know about the sepsis? Did he know about everything else and still wanted to claim that he's got AIDS? And, you know.
Yeah, unfortunately, what he said on that segment there is just another way of, I guess, making me look bad. I don't know why, but I've just shown you the proof from the physician that, the physician said it was a spider bite, insect bite. That's what it was.
So what kicked off? And I guess we'll go to like chapter 3 of this. And by the way, thank you for hanging out with me as long as you have. And so what kicked off the campaign that you started the last 10 years? What was the first steps? What got you going on it? I mean, obviously I know why. Your love for Tommy. He's your husband, and he had a raw deal. There was a narrative painted about him. And this man right here who plasters my wall is my hero. And God bless you for doing what you're doing, because you have people like me who are fans. And we saw the 30 for 30. That's the most popular documentary out there. That was the narrative. And so what kicked it off? And you have made so much headway. We're going to get to that in just a second, of the positive press that you're starting to get.
Right.
What was the first door? What was the first avenue?
Well, how it all kicked off was when I got the postmortem report from the physician, and the phone call to say that Tommy did not have HIV, did not have AIDS. So that started it off. It was also a promise to Tommy. You'll see a lot of clips on the media where he's trying to prove that he never had it, right? He was trying to do that since 1996. And one thing I promised to him when, as he was dying, was that I would carry on the fight for him. And, and I'm thinking at the time, how am I going to do that? But then when you've got all the science behind you, not the sweet science, but the science, that I thought, okay, I can do this for him, and I'm not going to give up showing people that he was innocent. I want him exonerated, because that's exactly what he was trying to do. So that's what started it. And I actually filed a lawsuit against people in Nevada, because that's where it all began. Nevada is the scene of the crime, let's say. And so after speaking with a physician in Vegas, where he said he didn't diagnose Tommy, I thought, okay, well then, somebody's responsible. So I filed a lawsuit in federal court in Nevada against the Nevada Commission, Mark Ratner, Dr. Margaret Goodman, and Quest Labs, and this Dr. John Hyatt. So that's how it all began. And over the last 10 years, we went to the Ninth Circuit Court. We also went to, this is the Ninth Circuit Court papers that you file. We also went to the Supreme Court, right? My friends up there, and did the rounds actually twice. So we did federal court, Ninth Circuit Court, Supreme Court, back again to federal court, back to the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco, and back again to the Supreme Court. And with every filing, I got more and more evidence from me. So it took 10 years to get everything I needed, right? And I'm thinking, I wish Tommy was here to see all that. Yeah. For example, during the lawsuit, they had to produce the lab report that everybody says, is what diagnosed Tommy with HIV. Okay. Now, the only problem is that the lab report has the wrong physician's name on it, has Tommy listed as 99 years old, right? And they stored the blood in a toxicology freezer. For whatever reason, it should have been room temperature. It would take 2 to 3 working days for it to be tested. So timeline, again, very important. The results were never really available. It had a protein as of the testing, P31. And this, again, 1996. In 1993, the FDA had taken that out. Fauci had taken that out, P31, as being a qualifying protein for HIV. So for whatever reason, it's showing up on a lab report. And then there's a Dr. Russell, who I have since, in the last few days, Google Dr. Russell, right? He was never Tommy's physician, but also if this happened in 1996, Dr. Russell retired in 1985. So how can we be sending lab reports to a physician that retired almost 7 years prior, right? Plus, with every lab report, I don't know if you know this, but it's supposed to be signed off by a pathologist as being correct. And that's as per the Code of Federal Regulation, it has to be signed off. So none of this makes sense. And that's their only proof that Tommy had HIV, which was produced for the first time in 2014 from 1996. So that's what started it off. And then it carries on, and there's one docket here, docket 217. Listen to this sentence, right? This honorable court should not lose sight of the fact that no one diagnosed Mr. Morrison with HIV on February 10th, 1996.
That's called a mic drop, kids.
It says it right there, and that's filed by the Nevada Athletic Commission, docket 217, and it's 15 and 16. You can just pull it up yourself. So the whole lawsuit became more and more interesting. Then I find out that the actual test that Quest uses is a laboratory developed test, an LDT. And an LDT is not approved by the FDA. Okay, so that means that if it's not approved by the FDA, you cannot actually send out lab reports as per the CDC. You can't send out a lab report if it's an FDA approved test, non-FDA approved test, without getting it approved or any type of authentication. Right. So actually, as I'm still working on this, more and more stuff comes out. And then the AIDS conference, which Dr. Fauci attended, right? In 2018, it was the 22nd International AIDS Conference. The testing for RNA and DNA testing. So you've got the antibody testing, you've got the viral load testing, you've got the RNA, DNA testing, right? Which Fauci puts in for HIV/AIDS. Well, this comes out in the AIDS conference. RNA and DNA aren't infectious. Okay, so antibodies are not infectious. RNA and DNA aren't infectious. They're only genetic material and not the whole virus. You need the whole virus in order to infect somebody. So whenever you get tested for HIV, get them to test you for the whole virus to see if you're infectious. But the only problem is that there's no commercial test available to detect the whole virus out there, except for the test that Tommy did.
Wow. And, the reason I smile as much as I do while I listen to you give all this, and it's not because it's humorous to me. I am so proud that Tommy had you. I mean, that's a blessing. And like the presentation you did up in Washington, that's like a masterclass. And I mean, like you've done your research, and that's amazing to me. There are a few. So just to I want to clarify some of the outstanding not rumors, but I wanted to just address them. And because there's one person that we haven't brought up. We touched on him, but we didn't really bring him up. So I watched, there was a documentary Mike Tyson did where he referred to Don King as the devil incarnate. He says the most evil man that ever walked the face of the planet.
Wow.
So Tommy had a contract with the man. Once he was tested positive in 96, boom, null and void, right? There was an out. Now, I don't know if you want to delve into it, but there are stories that the day before all this HIV media came out in 96, there was a trailer. There was Don King had a little meeting with Tommy's maybe his entourage or his handlers, we'll call it, his
Right.
representatives. Is that something we want to discuss, or is that something we just want to leave on the sideline there?
No, let's discuss it, right? Because it's something that hasn't been included. There's a scene that's missing in ESPN 30 for 30. And the scene is something that is pretty important. Yeah, Don King, I've never met Don King. I believe he's getting on a bit now. I've heard of him, but I don't know him. I did try and contact him at one point to see if he would help me out with this, because I couldn't believe all the stuff that I was finding out in this 10-year lawsuit. Why he never kind of said, Trisha, let's meet, because I lost millions of dollars, with Tommy being kicked out. Well, none of that happened. I'm thinking, why? So the Don King contract, which the Nevada Commission said never existed, is actually on the docket December 30th, 2020, thanks to Tommy's son, Kenzie, who located it for me, right? Everybody said they had it and couldn't find it. So Kenzie was great. I love him for it. And he brought that to me. And there's also dated January 22nd, 1996, just a few weeks before the fight, a document between Tony Holden and Don King, which was produced, right, where Tony Holden has his own contract with Don King for whatever reason, and Tommy never really knew about that one. So Don King has stuck in my mind a little bit because, I don't know why he didn't tell the world that Tommy's opponent, Arthur Stormy Weathers, was never going to be able to fight, because his manager had sent him on the 2nd of February, that's before the 10th of February, a letter and a physician's note saying Arthur Stormy Weathers cannot fight. And there was no replacement for him, right? They still did the weigh-in that night before, and that next day it wasn't Stormy Weathers that got kicked out, it was Morrison, right? So it's all been very interesting. And then I come across something which actually is mentioned in court records but never became available, that I found in Tommy's stuff, right? His secret stash. And it's something that's written by Tony Holden, and it's telling Tommy, it's kind of outlining the events of what happened. Right. For whatever reason, I don't know why somebody has to write that down, but he says that he got off the plane, he was met by Don King people, and this is the day of the fight, February 10th, and that his first stop was the trailer with Don King to finalize some business, right? And you think, well, what business could he have been finalizing? So yeah, it's worth a mention because there was obviously communication between him and Don King, and that's where his own contract comes into play, right, with Don King.
And I'm assuming, Tommy made zero from Don King, and I find it interesting that Tommy's unofficial advisor had a contract with probably the biggest promoter on the planet. I wonder if he made any money, and Tommy did not. So it's a lot of ambiguity.
He did. He actually texted me. He did make something from Don King on that contract, and I won't disclose it today.
Obviously,
but it will come out. And then what's really strange is that the medical release form, for the supposed HIV diagnosis, that's not Tommy's signature. And I even took it as far as a forensic handwriting expert, which is in court documents, and it's looking more like Tommy's ex-managers writing, which would be John Brown. So, the whole story is pretty interesting, right?
Whew. Well, and listen, I've told you this candidly, and I'll tell you this on our show here, that Tommy's story is so, I hate to say salacious. There's just layers upon layers, and it comes from every angle, and then it gets bigger than just Tommy. It gets into AIDS and HIV research, matriculates over to COVID. Then you have the underbelly of boxing and how you can basically whitewash a man from the history books, deny him the Hall of Fame, which he is so rightfully deserving, yellow wash his wife in all the things she has done, promote the people that didn't really know him but will toe the party line and say the right narrative. By the way, if you listen to the 30 for 30, which I have almost memorized in my head, is that Tony Holden did say, well, Tommy, I got a call from Don King. And he said, Tommy hasn't taken his blood test. I said, what? So I called Tommy. Tommy, take your blood test. Well, you told me not to do anything till you were here. I said, Tommy, take your stinking blood test. You can't. And that's when, according to that, then he arrives in Vegas. He sits down with the doctor ringside. Ringside's doctor tells him, and then we're off to the races with Tommy. And it's very sad to me that history, your work, fans like me, and he was my hero growing up. I mean, I'm 42. I just turned 42. He's been my hero for 30 plus years. And so we will continue to fight because people need to know you're not doing this for money. This is to restore your husband's legacy.
Yeah.
There's books out there. I unfortunately purchased one, read 3 pages of it, and I returned it to Amazon, which I got it on discount, called the Duke. And do not read this. I don't care. Whatever your name is, if you see this, it's trash. It was sensationalized and it was lies. I think the first page, what was it, Trisha? I read it to you. They had some famous quotes, and then he said, "So many blondes, so little time." Quote Tommy Morrison. If that's the first page before you even hit chapter 1, you know where this whole thing is going.
Yeah. Well, I have a picture of who you're talking about. All right. I don't know if you can see him.
Yeah.
All right. His name is Carlos, right? Mm-hmm. I think he has a boxing record of 0-0, right? And one of the things he mentions, and I know actually, I had a discussion with somebody on Twitter just yesterday, because he was saying that the best book he's ever read was this book about my husband, right? Mm-hmm. And I go, well, if you turn to page 166 of that book, I said, he has Dr. Pat Nemechek, who is a leading expert in the treatment of AIDS, right, is what this guy has written in his book. Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Patrick Nemechek is not an expert witness in HIV/AIDS and cannot establish or provide a reliable opinion in this case. He is an osteopath and has never held board certification in immunology, pathology, neurology, or the subspecialty of infectious diseases, and has no experience conducting research into some of those matters. He has never seen a real live image of HIV. He is not board certified in any particular specialty at the moment. Before relocating to Arizona, he practiced medicine in Kansas, where for a time he focused on assisting individuals with weight loss. At some point in that prior time frame, Nemechek received a warning from the FDA regarding the adequacy of certain aspects of his study parameters. And yet the guy that's written the book on my husband labels this guy as a leading expert in the treatment of AIDS, right?
So I was sitting in a hotel room right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. The first time you and I talked, I actually had that book right there, and I think I brought it up to you. And then we started talking about this gentleman. I'm not going to give his name airtime. And we read the So Many Blondes, So Little Time, and then we went to the references. And you got to realize that it's probably not the source of truth when the references are the New York Post, National Enquirer, things, Wikipedia. If those are your resources for a published book, and by the way, if you don't believe anything we're saying, go read the reviews on Amazon. So he got
Yeah, they're
my
bad.
$8.99 back, by the way.
Good, good. Yeah, there is a 30-day money back guarantee on Amazon. So
Yeah.
read the book and then just send it back, right, for a full refund.
I don't even want that guy's trash in my head. So he got, yeah. But there's, so one of the things that, and this was a blessing that Trisha, that you and I have, we've connected, is that, we want to, and I'm saying we, like I'm even on your level, but I want to help Trisha in this endeavor, and that, and I would love to have you back. I'm not putting you on the spot, but maybe I plan on having the new Tommy Morrison website ready by Sunday. If maybe we can get together and
Right.
we can unveil it together.
Right.
I would love to, because guys, I think you're really going to appreciate it, and it's paying respect. Every time, every
Right.
second I was doing any of this stuff, I have a picture, and I've told Trisha about this. It's the same picture I look of Tommy at Tommy, and I'm not trying to sound supernatural with this, but he's speaking to me. And so I do all this, what we do, is out of love for that man right there, and honoring his legacy. And so there's a lot of stuff. We're trying this I Am Tommy Morrison to reintroduce the world to the real Tommy Morrison, not the media portrayal. And this is just another step. If you want to, anybody, I implore you, not really implore you, but I would recommend going on YouTube. And Trisha, how many interviews have you done now? It seems like you are like one of the hottest interview guests now of basic combat sports, or anybody that has a podcast or a show. You're on it, and you're getting published.
Yeah.
What was the magazine that finally? What was it?
Yeah, one of the biggest boxing news, world boxing news in the UK, that has a big following. They finally published, December 21, 2022, which is an exciting moment. Because you know what, on December 21, 2013, just after Tommy had died, that was when the physician in Vegas said, I never diagnosed Tommy with HIV. So it's almost a pretty historic moment that the media should now start actually giving out the true information. And it's all supported in court records, right? Which is the beauty of it. And people are talking about it. Fans are actually saying, hey, no, watch this link, right? Or no, he didn't die of HIV/AIDS. This is what happened. So I'm excited because Tommy's finally, his fans are fighting for him, which is what he wanted. Yeah. And I'm excited about that.
And I love it. I love that the narrative is no longer Trisha Morrison, AIDS denier. It is, here's the proof. And that's, God bless you for having every single document to where nobody could call you a denier or a kook or whatever they were trying to paint you as.
Right.
No, you're the one with the facts. They're the one with the false narrative. And
right.
What did Tommy say? I think you've had it in one of your posts. What's done in the dark will become made light.
Yeah, every day, Brad, he would say, everything hidden in darkness will come to the light.
Yeah. And that was right after he said, so many blondes, so little time.
Yeah. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe he did say that, but I doubt it. But
I want to know where that. I should have. I wish I hadn't sent the book back now, because I want to look at where he got that quote from. Which is
actually, yeah.
So what are the next steps? What are other than some of the stuff that kind of, I hate that I'm lumping even myself, but the new website, we're doing some more promo things, and I'm doing my due diligence to try and get headway into. I would think that this would make a fantastic Netflix story, and or a series, or just a big movie. And that's
right.
That's not the goal here, but I think it's to have his story told properly. With you as an advisor, I think that would be great. But what are your next steps?
Well, I think the next steps are actually, they're pretty exciting, and still a lot of work to do. But there's certain segments which need to come out of that ESPN 30 for 30, first of all, because probably they're slanderous. I do have some legal help coming on that. So that's a project that I'm still working on. With regards to a movie, it's horrible to show the pain and suffering of Tommy, what he went through, but people have to realize what he went through with all this, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because it could happen to somebody else if it's not already happening to them, right? And that's what his fear was, is he didn't want anybody to go through what he was going through. And unfortunately, I think some people are or have done, right? And then the new website and everything is just becoming exciting. Basically, people from all ages are now starting to get introduced to the real Tommy Morrison.
Yeah, my son-in-law.
And that's what he wanted.
My son-in-law, who is 25 years old, and ever since, he had seen all my memorabilia that I have of Tommy's. And by the way, my birthday present, by the way, Trisha, I have treasured that. I even saved the envelope it was sent in. That was the best gift. Thank you. And that touched me so much because you said it was from you and Tommy, and that's it. So thank you. I want to say that publicly. But my son-in-law had really never heard of Tommy and just with my memorabilia, and he started to do his own. And he told me Christmas Day, he said, Brad, I never realized how much of a badass Tommy Morrison was. And if you ask George Foreman, Ray Mercer, or anybody got in the ring with Tommy Morrison, who the hardest hitter they ever encountered was, it was him. Do you think, and this is a personal opinion, that Tommy will get into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, he will. He will get into a Hall of Fame. Yeah. It's funny because we went to Canastota and there's a gift shop there and there's kind of like a museum. And I have posted photos on Facebook, and he's standing against the wall and he's pointing to a picture of him and George Foreman, and it's got at the top "History in the Making." And I'm just wandering around. He's going, hey, that's me up there. And he was so happy just even to be in the museum, right? But he will be in the Hall of Fame. I think mainly a lot of the Hall of Famers, it's political for them. But I think now that the story that's getting out there is that there was never a diagnosis of HIV, that his legacy will start to be brought back, right, to where it should be.
I watched a video, EA Sports. I think it was in 2010 or 11 when they did the fight night round 4 or and they had Tommy had a whole 5-minute I saved it on my computer. I'm going to share it out on my social media. It's I don't know. It'll bring a tear to your eye. And that I'm not saying you have to be a Tommy Morrison. I'm not going to call myself a fanatic fan, but it'll hit you there just because he's thin and he's talking but he's in his eyes, he's remembering the roar of the crowd. He's telling the stories, and you just it breaks your heart because they took this man's passion away from him in 96. And so, that's what gets me. But I encourage anybody to go watch Rocky V, because if you don't think Tommy Gunn was not a badass, he was. And so he is, it's something to check it out. So Trisha, is there anything that you want to leave us with, or we can, we want to end on a high note, I guess?
It's funny with the video game, the EA Sports video game, right? You should have seen him play it, right? He had no idea how to work that thing, right, to get him to win. And we did a fundraiser for a kid that was terminally ill, and was never going to be able to get in the ring himself, right? And so they were both on the same par. Tommy couldn't get in the ring, right? He was banned for life. This little kid couldn't get in the ring. So what other way could they fight? They could fight on EA Sports, right? Fight night round 4, fight night round 5, I think it was.
Yeah.
So we set up this little foundation evening, which was a fundraiser for this kid, and the big screen there. and it was Tommy on the screen, right, with this little kid on the screen. And after 3 rounds, the little kid knocks Tommy out, right? And he just loved it. But at the same time, he was looking at this kid that was going like this with his fingers and moving himself around and punching Tommy on screen. And Tommy was going, oh my goodness, what's wrong with this kid, right? And then that was it. He was down, right? Out for the count. But it just goes to show, his legacy is in video games, right?
Yeah.
It's in the movies, Rocky V. A lot of people are falling in love again with Rocky V, right? The next thing that's missing is kind of like a Netflix documentary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have people that are working on that with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's exactly what Tommy would want out there, right? So if anybody that's listening to this, I'm sure below us will be an old video from 9 months ago or even 10 years ago with millions and millions of views. But the real truth is actually what you're listening to right now. I think that's what's going to be real important.
Yeah. And it's all about, it's just about reintroducing people.
Yeah.
That's what we're calling it. We're just in case you forgot who the heck that man was, we're going to reintroduce you to the Duke.
Yeah.
And I will say this.
You can't forget him, Brad. You just can't forget him, because every Christmas, Rocky V comes out in every country in the world, right?
Yeah.
They do a director's cut. I hope they don't cut Tommy out. So we'll see.
Yeah, and the people don't believe. First acting gig, and also it was also, he's 21 at the time.
20, yeah, 21.
21. I mean, and he was a natural. And also, ladies and gentlemen that watch this, there are Rocky action figures, and there are multiple versions of Tommy Gunn action figures, which are good collectors, and they're very expensive, by the way. And if anybody has Xbox Game Pass on their play, you can get Fight Night Round 4, which I discovered, and I got knocked out by my 6-year-old, the same manner that Tommy did. He was Tyson, I was Tommy. I got knocked out in less than 45 seconds.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But it's cool that I get to reintroduce Tommy to a 6-year-old too. So he knows more about Trisha Morrison than anybody around here.
And that's great. That's what he would want. And just one other thing, let's leave on, is drug rehab. Yeah. Right. This was so important to Tommy. Yeah. And it's something that people still say, oh, his demons and everything. If you've been given a death sentence, he said the reason why he went to drugs is to fill a void, right? And he almost gave up on himself. People were waiting for when he would destroy himself and commit suicide, basically. And then he turned it around, and this is just one of his drug test results, right? I don't know if you can see it, but hey, I'll be happy to email it to anybody. Negative for cocaine, negative for this, negative for that. So he did it. He went to drug rehab. He did it. Okay, he gave me a hard time a little bit, right? But I drove him there and picked him up and drove him back again, and we did it. And the very first test result that he had that was negative, he made a copy for the bedroom, a copy for the fridge, a copy for the car, right? A copy for the gym, a copy for his pocket.
I love that. That makes me smile. And he was proud of it. I mean, he probably is just as proud of that as anything else.
Yeah.
It's funny. That's So I know. All right, we will draw this. The first night I talked to this wonderful woman right here at 1 hour 34 minutes. First conversation.
Oh my God.
We could go.
I've got more and more and more stuff here for you.
Oh, let's keep going. So I got being in politics, I got a letter from the state of Tennessee for 2023. What are some of the initiatives, or what is they call it a statement of interest, that I have to fill out, some platforms and things that I want to support and that nature. And my biggest thing, so I've told you this too, in January of 2012, I was homeless, living in my car, and drank myself into homelessness. And April 8th of this coming up year will be 11 years completely sober. I've been in the rehabs. I've been in halfway houses. I've been arrested 13 times. And I have, when I hear Tommy, I've been where Tommy was with being proud to say, I'm drug free or whatever. And to, so it's something that's really touched me. And I'm actually working with the Tennessee Department of Workforce Development and Reentry to get these guys who are in halfway houses, who are in court-appointed rehabs, or to find them long-term help, and to get them the proper skills to, resume building, Excel spreadsheets, that just Microsoft Office, the things that they don't have. So when they come out of these places, they're not going to, not going to a gas station or going back to the streets to sling drugs. They have skills that they can carry them on. And that's what my statement of interest, that's what I'm working with the local, I'm not trying to get a platform here, but I'm just saying I'm working with the local mental health facility and the local halfway house and trying to have some grant money coming to build up awareness of the opioid crisis that we have going on here and the importance of rehabilitation the proper way. Not just, hey, you did your 30 days. Hey, good job. No, it's long-term. It's long-term sustainability. So that's funny that you brought that up. I didn't mean to get on the soapbox on that.
No, that's good, because actually drug rehab for Tommy was in Tennessee. So that was really important actually for
Where
us.
was it? I've probably been there.
Sevierville, Sevierville, Tennessee,
Okay. And that is where he also the incarceration. There's where he. Do we want to go into why he was even incarcerated? We just.
Well, he was incarcerated over an $80 unpaid fine from South Dakota from 2006. So everything that he went through in jail in Sevierville, everything that he went through in jail in Wichita, actually got dismissed about 4 or 5 months later. So.
And I hate that picture, that image that they have of him after the 30 days is the one that everybody ran with, that Tommy Morrison's downfall, and they used that as. And I love the story that you told me. As soon as he did get out, the first stop he wanted to do was to Walgreens to get a razor and the shaving cream.
He wanted shaving cream, cell phone charger, and everything, because he didn't want to look like that, right?
Yeah. But well, that's not the memory you have and I have and his fans have, and we're going to paint this. We're going to flip this script on everybody. So we have a lot to look forward to in the future as it pertains to Tommy the Duke Morrison, 2-time heavyweight champion, Hollywood actor, great guy who loved his fans. He has a great wife who's fighting for him still, who's not doing this for money, who is doing this to restore a legacy. And we're going to right some wrongs here. So. Trisha, I guess if we can make the time Sunday or Monday for a big reveal, I'm going to send it to you, the new website that we will reveal to everybody where the new TommyTheDukeMorrison.com, and just so much stuff, guys, coming up. And we want to reintroduce you to Tommy, the real Tommy.
Yeah, we do. And there's just so much more that we could talk about. Not only the sweet science and the real science, there's violation of the statutes in Vegas, all kinds of stuff. But that's stuff that you'll hear about, I'm sure, in whatever movie, comes out.
Well, that too, and we might even add a section to the website where we can just do little snippets of these little stories, and it doesn't have to be long form, and we just boom, and everybody can find this as a source of truth, because the source of truth is the wonderful lady that I'm talking to right now. And I
want to leave you with, because I spent time doing this last night, right? So even though I've been in this for 10 years, I'm still in the fight, right? But here, I hope you can see all this. These are all lab reports, test results, right? And in addition to all the faces that I've shown you of people that didn't find HIV or any AIDS diseases, these are people that found no malignant cells, no viral inclusions, right? And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to carry on and show you every single picture, right? Okay, every single picture. They're people that work in the medical field that did testing, found no malignancies. Some of these guys, some of these are practitioners, but they've all got their names on these test results, right, that I've got, and is proof, right, that these people also were searching for the virus, right? Men, women, okay, medical directors from all parts of the world. These are all people that were trying to find some malignancy in Tommy, right? And I kid you not, this took a while last night because I wanted to make sure that these were not conspiracy theorists, right? Okay, but these are all people well educated, and I'm sure that they're just going to love to have their photos on Tommy's website, right, with their names and with the test result of what they tested Tommy for. And we're talking about cerebral spine fluid, we're talking about tissues, we're talking about blood, we're talking about going into the lungs, right? And another lady right here. I just love it. I mean, I just love finding all this proof. I had no idea that all this existed in these court records. And, you know, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a physician, but basically they did the work for me, right? And I can't wait for this to go up on that website.
Yep.
And they shouldn't have a problem. You know, the test results are signed right there from these guys. Okay. One more thing, Brad.
Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
Before you go, and you can always cut this interview down and make it into small parts, right? But you are, I believe the other night you went into a legislative meeting, right? You're in politics, right? Okay, so, all right, so somebody says, okay, well, if he didn't have HIV, didn't have AIDS, and nobody diagnosed him in Vegas, and they're saying that in court records, why was he kicked out of boxing, but then reinstated again, right? But why was he kicked out of boxing? Well, in docket 140, right, page 15, it said Morrison failed to comply with NAC 467.027 section 3, right? And as a result was not issued a license. Okay, so this is the commission saying he failed a statute, which for those that don't know anything about statute, it's a law, and the Nevada Commission has to abide by the laws and statutes in their licensing. And it's called the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA Act, where you have to take the new policies and rules to the legislator in that state. You have to have a meeting. You probably know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was talking about before. You have to have a meeting. You have to propose the new law. For example, drawing blood. You have to propose that. It has to be issued out there for the public to comment on. And then it has to be approved by the legislator. And then it has to be enacted and approved in the legislative papers, right? So I never knew anything about that, right? And so throughout the lawsuit, suddenly this that he violated a statute. And I'm sitting in Tommy's room and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you know, I'm just really curious about when that statute was enacted. So I had to do further research on the legal side of stuff. And I had to contact the legislator in Nevada and also the library that holds certain information on laws and stuff like that. And then I had to pay for a legal document, which is this with like a little seal on there, right? Stamped from the legislator. And they were kind enough to send me when I purchased the meetings of the meeting, right? Which is all these pages, and you can see I've marked some pages, right? And so they sent me this, and basically what I wanted to know was the law that they said that Tommy had violated, NAC 467.027 Section 3 and Section 3B, did that exist on February 10th, 1996? And the answer was no, it did not exist. It did not even get proposed until 1997 and did not get approved until December 29th, 1997. So they're saying that they kicked him out because of that law, but it didn't exist. And so that's what took me back again to federal court and to the appellate court and the Supreme Court. Was they lied in court saying that a statute existed when it didn't exist. So their answer to the judge, and bear in mind this was the fourth judge on the case, right? The others had recused themselves, but Judge Richard Bulwer stuck it out, right? And in docket 318, page 5, line 4, the commission write, there was no reason to research the history of the regulation. In other words, you know, so what, right, if it didn't exist? So that was really disappointing that the judge did not catch them on something. So basically what he did was he actually put into force an ex post facto law, which means that Tommy violated a law that didn't exist, right? But so what the judge did was he made a law that came out over a year later and did it retroactive to 1996. And that is a violation. That's a constitutional violation, right? Now, not in addition to that law that they said that he broke, they then said to me, oh, well, you know, we can throw him out because of this law. We can mention that he's got HIV because of this law. They listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other laws. One didn't come out until 1999. Another one didn't come out until 1999. Then 467.100 Section 3 didn't come out until 2003. And then the other two until 1997. So throughout this whole lawsuit, they were using laws against me that never existed. How does that work? How is that allowed to happen is what I would like to know.
And they banned your husband for something that wasn't even in existence. Then February 96, it doesn't even come into existence till December of 97.
Right.
Called out to the judge, who then says, mind your business, and retroactively goes back and changes it. And there is
gets over it.
This is infuriating. Matter of fact, I'm going to flip this right to the front. What can be done? Because I'm sure I have plenty of lawyer friends around here who are going to see this and salivate over this. Is there still action that can be taken over this? Because the man's livelihood, had this not happened in 96, we might not be talking about him in the past tense in 2023, 22.
Right. What can happen? Well, let me just read you something. Okay, let me read this to you because this is pretty important. And this is something that I pulled up from the LA Times in 1996 on February 18th. Okay. Bill Eastman, chairman of the California Athletic Commission, does not think something should be taken. Morrison had been scheduled to fight Saturday night in Las Vegas, but when his HIV test was positive, which we now know was not, right, he was suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, which had administered the test. That would not have been this case in California, which does not require fighters to take an HIV test. Now, this is the next part that's real important. Every time it comes up, Eastman said, and Eastman is the chair of the California Athletic Commission, the politicians scatter like cockroaches under a light, are afraid of not being politically correct. I've been trying to get legislation passed for this test for 3 years. We have actively sought an author for such a bill, but we haven't been able to find one. So California knew then that they had to, in order to have somebody test HIV, they had to pass it through the legislature, right? Well, now we know that Nevada never even passed it through the legislature and was requiring it. But not only that, right? He says it is only that suspension, the suspension in Nevada, which allows the California Commission to keep Morrison from fighting in this state, Eastman said. If the California Commission had received the information on Morrison on its own, Eastman said it could not legally have stopped Morrison from fighting here. So essentially, Nevada's suspension, which got lifted 10 years later, made the other states not accept him, even though there was no HIV testing passed by the legislature, neither in Nevada or in any other state. And I can bet you that a lot of the states have enacted HIV testing without legislative approval, right? Now, the reason why they enact HIV testing is because they want, obviously, for the health and safety of a boxer, right? They want a lab report, right? Which shows that the boxer has or has not HIV, right? That's what they're asking for. I mean, that's the only piece of evidence that they have in that case is that lab report. Well, let's go back now to the medical science. Quest Diagnostics has never contended that its laboratory test reports are confirmation of a definitive diagnosis of the presence of HIV. Nor has Quest Diagnostics ever contended that the Nevada State Athletic Commission should accept a lab test result as a confirmation of a definitive diagnosis of any disease or condition, including HIV.
I don't know if we clarified this. What was that, the statute that he violated? What was the verbiage?
It was NAC 467.027 section 3B, and that was, he violated because he did not provide a lab report, right, which showed whether he had or did not have HIV. And yet you go to the lab, they're saying our lab report doesn't even do that.
In 2006, when they reinstated him on the low, just under the cover of night, what was the rationale they gave them?
They actually did it that basically they were taking test results, the pre-fight medical test results, and putting him down as license denied. Right now, this is 2006. Now, when you deny somebody a license, that's only valid for 1 year. It's not valid forever. So really, in 2006, when they changed it to license denied, what was he denied? Why did they deny him? Well, then I went in to find out they denied it because he broke a law. Okay, well, what law? This law. Okay, well, when was that enacted? That wasn't enacted till 97. So it's like, are you crazy?
If y'all don't think that the boxing commission or there's no corruption going on, this is so. You know what? We never talked about this. I mean, I'm glad we are. This is infuriating. This is. I mean, it's a travesty, but it's such a violation, and they ruined the man's life.
Yeah, Tommy he always said, I have a higher purpose. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's not boxing. And he always would say it. So was his higher purpose to expose the testing, to expose the law, to expose the greed? You know, what was it? Right. And we're getting closer and closer together. Because right now, what's being exposed is the fake news media, right? So, for example, this woman, Elizabeth Merrill, right, who's on ESPN 30 for 30.
Fantastic
right?
Picture, by the way.
It's a real picture. I didn't yellow it or anything like that. She is the one that is saying all over the mass media and ESPN 30 for 30, since February 10th, 1996, when the Nevada Athletic Commission said Morrison tested positive for HIV before a fight, the 44-year-old has spent most of his days dodging the diagnosis. Right? She is the one saying that it's a diagnosis, right?
That's a rough one.
Court records to Mark Ratner himself, the one that supposedly told Tony Holden, a question that he answered was, admit in your capacity as agent, servant, and or employee of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, the Nevada Athletic Commission did not say Tommy tested positive for HIV before the fight on February 10th, 1996 in Las Vegas. And he responds, admit. He never did. Right?
You know, on that 30, that lady that you just showed, she got more airplay than you did.
She did. And you know what? It's going to come to bite her because she's responsible for saying there was a diagnosis made. Okay. And she has done that publicly, and it's on video, and it's actually in media, social media. It's everywhere. She's pretty much responsible for that diagnosis, right?
Woo! Man, we were getting ready to say the goodbyes, and my blood pressure, I don't even have blood pressure problems, is up.
Brad, there's just so much to this story. You know, when I promised Tommy I would finish his fight, I had no idea that I would unravel all this. No idea.
Now, was Tommy, I know I mean, everything that all the interviews that I poured through that he did, and when he would bring this up, he's saying all the things that I was supposed to have, all the things that were supposed to happen to me,
right?
They haven't happened. And I keep, I'm in the best shape. I mean, I will add that into this. You have my word of some photo shoots that he had done from 2010 where this man was supposed to be, sick and dying. And it just goes to show you when they want whatever, he who controls the media controls the narrative. He who controls the narrative controls the mindset of the populace. And, we're gonna fight this. I hope that anybody that's watching this, if this angers you, if they're gonna go through this link for Tommy Morrison, boxer, what else would they go through to mold the narrative? So, Trisha, you're doing you're doing God's work. You're doing Tommy's work, and you're doing God's work. And this isn't going to be the only interview you and I are doing. Matter of fact, I might just rename this whole thing to Trisha time.
No, not my time. No.
But we're going to add these little snippets and these little. We'll get together more frequently and add these snippets to the website and just highlight.
Right.
This is everything relating to boxing corruption or whatever media corruption and the crazy.
It's every question answered. Everybody has a question, which I'm glad they're asking, but we're answering every question that's out there.
Yeah.
Did he have HIV/AIDS? No. What did he break the rule? No. How did he die? Okay, this is how he died. Okay, why haven't we seen this? Because it was completely deleted from ESPN 30 for 30, right? So we've done it the proper way. We've followed the science the way Fauci says we're supposed to, right? We're doing the testing. We've got proper people in place. We're not going by a mother's diagnosis or Elizabeth Merrill from ESPN 30 for 30 diagnosis. We're doing everything scientifically correct, right? Because Tommy deserved that. And I honestly think that this could be happening to somebody else.
Absolutely. Well, I just want anybody that watches this. I have zero to give, and I will promote this, and I will sing it to the rooftops to fight this. So, try to take me out of office. You ain't gonna do it because I'm fighting. I got truth right here with me. So, good luck. But we've got such a long. I mean, you've done the legwork. You and I have a long partnership with this, and I am so excited to do it. And I'm literally like my hand's shaking right now. I'm so mad with what you just showed me, and that is it's just so wrong. It's just, why would people do that? I mean, I know what would make a journalist go, or anybody. What would be their rationale? And I don't know if it's their 5 minutes of fame. Who knows? But Trisha, life worth living. You are living a life worth living. You're doing so many good things. I could not have named this show anything better. Not that I am so great. I just you're doing something that is very noble for a man who had a life worth living and has a legion of fans that. And you know what? We're reintroducing them to new fans, and we're exposing a lot of corruption. He didn't want anybody
to give up on him. All the years that he was in those darkest years, a lot of people gave up on him. And I promised I would never do that. And I'm glad you're not doing that too.
No, I have that one picture I showed you that on my computer that every time I want to go an extra hour, I'm working on this and this for Tommy. It's for him. And so, listen, I've been looking at that right there for 2 years and all this back here for forever. And he's, my hero that passed away from AIDS in 2013. That's what 30 for 30 told me. And then his crazy wacko AIDS denying wife came out with the truth. You literally, I cannot, the impressive part, the reason I'm smiling every time we'll go back and look at this, you would come up with documents after documents, and I'm smiling because anytime that they would try to stonewall you or somebody could come at you with anything, I got doctor after doctor after doctor. Oh, you think he didn't die of sepsis? Watch this. This is all the gauze that came out. Oh, you don't think he was railroaded in 96? Here's the documentation that shows that they retroactively made a law.
Yeah.
You're inspiring.
Yeah.
Trisha, thank you. I've actually got to go. I'm going to go now and have, today's my wife's birthday. We're going to go have dinner tonight. And thank you for working around that.
Yeah. Happy birthday to her. That's nice. I saw those pictures. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. And I will be in touch soon. And if you need anything more from me, well, I'll probably be calling you later. So when this is ready, I'm going to shoot this over to you. And y'all look forward to she and I connecting soon. And we're going to show you all the new website because big things are happening.
All right. Good deal. Well, you know what? I really appreciate it. And you're one of the ones that's fighting for Tommy. You're one of the people that he was thinking about way back in 2011 on our porch in Tennessee. And here you are in Tennessee fighting for him. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, those people in Sevierville, that's Middle Tennessee. We don't mess with them.
Yeah.
Patricia, have a blessed evening, and I will be in touch very soon, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brad. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.